Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is G. You're watching Allastrology, and this is for May, the month of May, Leo, 2023. Okay, Leo, we've got you ready to go. We have a busy month ahead of us. We're talking about May, and we have an eclipse this month. Yeah, another eclipse. Anytime we have one eclipse, there's always going to be another one that follows. That's just the way the cycle works. Eclipses never travel. They don't normally travel alone, which is why we always say eclipse season. Okay, so we have a few things we're going to cover. We're just going to say we're going to go over three things. All right, three main things. The first one will be the eclipse that happens in the May. Then we'll reference the Mercury retrograde. And then we will talk about the new moon further on down the line, further into the month of May. Okay. And it's still a very interesting, fascinating time because, again, for the month of May, Venus and Mars are very prominent this month, but so is Pluto. So it starts off at the beginning, right around the 5th of May. Okay. Now, before I get into the 5th of May, there's always this little backstory I got to talk about because it helps to understand like the underlying or the preceding energies that already exist before these other events occur, like when I give you the dates on those events. Does that make sense? So because we're doing a Leo reading, by the way, if you're watching this because you're a Leo birthday, you can keep watching. That is fine. But just understand that is your sun sign. Okay. So when you listen to a video, typically, especially here at Allastrology, these videos with the astrology sign on them, those are your rising signs. And so if you watch videos and you're like, you know what, those videos don't make sense for me, I find that they don't always line up. There can be a lot of different reasons to explain that. First being, you may be watching for your birthday and not your rising sign, or vice versa, right? If that makes sense. And so you may have certain things, because I know for me, this is how it was. Growing up as a youngster, I was always fascinated to go to the newspaper back when we would normally have a newspaper every single day, right? Because we didn't have the devices, right? So we had to go to a freaking newspaper. That's just the way it was, right? So they would have like the horoscopes. And I would read my sun sign, and guess what? My sun sign, it didn't make sense for me. I was like, I don't even get this. And so I would start reading all the signs because I just thought, it just makes sense. Okay, so if that one doesn't make sense for me, what does? And so I would read through all of them. And little by little over time, I would kind of like finger pick. Like I would be like, oh, this one makes sense for me. This one makes sense for me. And then I would think back as time went on, what made most sense, like according to what actually happened or didn't happen. Okay. So it didn't occur to me until later when I literally had my chart in my hand where I understood why that was. And so I'll give you a quick example. My sun sign is not in the sign of Aries energy. And that was a lot of the readings in the newspapers I would read for Aries. And I'm like, that's me, that's me, that's me. And this all makes sense. This makes sense. This makes sense. I don't have my sun in Aries. I don't have my rising in Aries. I don't have my moon in Aries. I don't have my home in Aries. I don't have my midheaven in Aries. What a freaking mystery, right? Not really. When you hear the next part, we'll explain it. I have a lot of planets in the sign of Aries. A lot. And I have the planet Mars on my ascendant. And that's a big deal. I may not have an Aries rising, but I have Mars sitting there on my ascendant. So when we look at signs in astrology and houses, and we think about how it's just this sign in this house and it's just clear cut, no, man, it's really complex. Those planets express those energies. Those planets, if they rule a sign, wherever you see that planet, it's expressing that same energy. Yeah. So it opens up this whole other way of how we can look at someone's chart and read it and predicting. It becomes even more confusing. Yeah. So I was just reading through some comments and messages I got from people, and they're like, you know what? This doesn't match for me whenever I look at these particular videos and whatnot. And that's because there's a whole lot of other reasons. And so a lot of folks send me your charts, send me your digits, comment down below. Tell me if you need help, if you're confused. That's what I'm here for. Okay. So I kind of said all of that to explain that for Leo energy, the sun rules Leo. Right. So where is the sun in your chart? What house is it in? Right. And then also look for where is your Leo energy. So you can be looking at three different places, right? You can look at literally your sun. You can look at your fifth house, right? And then you could also look at where is the sign of Leo in your chart. So that's three different things right there. And so there's three different ways where it can get really confusing, really fast, and why you can listen to one reading and it makes sense for you. And then another reading, you're like, it doesn't resonate as deeply for me this time. It's just not doing it for me. Okay. So have patience, because like if I were to sit down with you and point these things out in your chart, you would be like, okay, now I understand. It's not that it's gimmicky or that it's false. It's that there's layers involved here. It really takes a scientific mind. You have to be willing to look at every layer. Think about geology, the study of the earth, the study of the rocks, the study of the planet, the material, the stones, the layers. Think about that. That's what they do. They're looking at all the layers, right? And you have to be willing to look at all the layers of you, right? When we talk about an onion, yeah, I know. I'm throwing together all the different metaphors. What do they say? Onion is like, or life is a lot like an onion. You got to peel the layers. There's layers to it. That's the only part that makes sense, is the layers. I'm not sure about anything else in the onion relating to life, but as you peel the layers, yeah, sometimes you cry. And the more you peel, the more you cry. Let's not talk about that. That's a little depressing. We can't do that with a Leo video. Why? Because Leo is the sun and it's optimistic. It's fiery. It's going to be positive. It's courageous. Leo energy, courageous, can have a strong ego energy. It truly believes it's the authority figure because it's endowed with that strong willpower. So even though that Leo energy may not always know everything and may not always be right, it feels like it is, because it feels, think about this. Let's just pretend, well, you're Leo, we're not really pretending, but let's just pretend you literally are the sun, the luminary up in the sky. Let's just pretend. So you know that if you decide that you're not going to shine that day, everything on the planet's going to die, right? So in your mind, even though you're not literally having that conversation, there's gonna kind of be that that knowing, that understanding, that authority where you're up there high in the sky and people look up to you. Authority figures. People look to them to be like, okay, what are we doing today? If the sun's not out, I'm not going to the beach. If the sun's not out, I'm definitely not jumping in the water, right? And so we kind of look up to the sky, to the sun, right? And so as you're hearing me say this, for those Leos who are paying attention to the astrology in your own chart and the degrees and all that, you're hearing common words like authority figures, and you're probably thinking, but I thought you say Capricorn is an authority figure and Saturn. And you're right. You're right on both accounts. They are both authority figures in our lives. And don't we have different authority figures in our life? Parents, for some people, the clergy. For some people, when you're out there in the world and you got to follow the rules, your boss at your job. And who else gets to enforce those rules? Who else is supposedly the keeper of those rules on the streets, right? People, authority figures, policemen, policewomen, officers, right? They're supposed to keep things in order. They're supposed to protect and serve. They're supposed to be doing things according to the law. And so, right, they have the authority to write you a ticket if you're speeding. You see? So we have lots of different authority figures. And for some of us, it's none of those people. We don't hold them on that level. For some of us, it can simply be the one, right? Creator, the divine being, the universe, God, Allah, Yahweh, whatever whatever the supreme being is for you in your life would be in your world, it's like, that's the only authority in my life. So there's a lot of different ways, and the different ways are expressed through those different planets. So Capricorn and Saturn are like bosses, right? Political people, people who have extreme money and power, right? People who can be an authority over me, managers, even supervisors, even in your life, right? And then they can also be our dad, the Saturn, our dad, but so can the sun. The sun can be your father, right? Biblical, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Yes, there are astrologers who pick apart the Bible and they'll line up the astrology with it, right? I think there was one guy I used to watch a long time ago, astrotheosophy, he used to call it. Like, it makes sense. And not only that, Ellis Bailey is also known for channeling and bringing in a lot of the great knowledge and weaving in her Christian upbringing, okay, and understanding things on a deeper level. So this is a lot of information I'm throwing out there because we've got a lot of great minds watching the channel who can embrace a lot of this extra information, okay? So explaining all that helps us dip into the very beginning of the month. And it's the 5th of May. And there's the eclipse right at the beginning of the month. It's in a fixed sign. And that fixed sign, because Leo is fixed. So, when you hear me talk about another fixed sign, right away, you should have like a little bell going off in your head because we know that fixed squares fixed energy. Fixed and fixed square each other. I'm missing my other black pen. So we'll use this other pen I have. So I'm trying to create the square. I'm sorry. There's the square. It's either that or you're going to look at charts. And I know not everybody likes those charts because they're confusing as hell. And I understand totally. So we'll just do the pens, right? So it's a square, right? You get that 90-degree angle. Difficult because at a 90-degree angle, there's that point there, right? It's like it creates a sharp point at that angle. And those two things meet, right? So it's stress and tension. So fixed squares fixed. We have an eclipse in Scorpio, and that squares Leo. Okay. Now, don't get all crazy. Just relax. Listen for the degrees. Again, a lot of comments, a lot of messaging, a lot of people asking and saying it's confusing when I watch for a certain sign because it doesn't match. This is why you always have to pay attention to the degrees. I cannot stress that enough. Even if you're watching the video that you should be watching for, your chart may be so unique. Okay. You may have 3 signs crammed into one house. And if you're like me, you may have 2 houses or even 3 or 4 houses in your chart that are really big. And if they're really big, yeah, they didn't have to cram a lot into one house because it was so big. You could have a lot of degrees of each sign in that one house. You follow what I'm saying? I've seen people where they've got a full 30 degrees of one sign plus another full 30 degrees of another sign in one house. So if you have 2 signs in one house, that means throughout the rest of the chart, there's going to be 8. Well, actually, let's not get into that right now. It's going to be too confusing. If you want to know more about that, let me know. Maybe I'll create a separate video, but I don't want to go any further because that's going to make it too complicated. But just trust me and follow the degrees. Always listen for the degrees, and that's why I give the degrees during the video. And if I don't, they're always going to be down below, okay, for that reason. So now that I'm talking about degrees, 14 degrees and 58 minutes in the sign of Scorpio. This is a lunar eclipse, So we're talking moon energy, right? Lunar. So we know it's a full moon eclipse is what that means in the sign of Scorpio. Yeah. So we know full moons mean a closure, a completion, and an ending. We're releasing something. A cycle is coming to a close. That's what a full moon represents. It's an eclipse because it's near one of the nodes. It's near the south node. Okay. So if you were to look it up in your chart, like this is all pretty much normal. We know that the south node has been in Scorpio for quite some time. Yeah. It roughly is like 16 months in one sign. So this is nothing new. So just chill, right? It's the degrees that matter. Now, at the time of the eclipse, we have the south node around 3 degrees, 3, 4 degrees, 4 degrees. So what that tells us is it's the south node in Scorpio, it's the eclipse in Scorpio. So Scorpio is about releasing. It is, because it's like it's about stuff that's buried below the surface. And if we've buried something below the surface, it typically is going to be shared emotions, shared values, shared energy, because it's like energetic bonds, but it's emotional bonds as well. It also can be blood bonds. So Scorpio energy like encompasses so much, right? It does. It's bonds with people that I'm not even blood bonded with, like they're not related to me. I can have bonds with people that I have never even met, but yet we are bonded energetically. How the hell can you be bonded energetically with someone you've never met? Well, maybe we've had conversations online. How many of you have conversations with people online, right? And you feel like, oh man, they're my best buds. Like we get along so well. We vibe together. How is that possible? How is that even possible? How can you vibe with someone you've never met? Right? Now, for me, being an astrologer and looking at a chart and me feeling what I feel if I'm communicating with somebody, and then having the confirmation, seeing, oh, their thing is right here. And guess what? Mine's there too. Right. And so I can see it on paper. And so can you. So can you. Right. Ask me for your chart. I'll make sure you get it. And then you can start doing this very same things. Over time, you'll see those degrees and you'll see why you deeply resonate with somebody you just met, or that you've never met, but you just talk to them online, or you just talk on the phone, right? So that's Scorpio energy. It goes back a long, long time. Some say it represents other lifetimes or different lifetimes, however you want to look at it. And so there's memory there, soul memory, soul history there. And so a lot of these can be deep, intense, and powerful. A lot of the Scorpio energy, we compare it to like the occult, the astral realm. We also can compare it to just things that are buried so deep, they can be our hurts and our wounds and our vulnerabilities. Think about this. Your vulnerabilities, you don't walk around with them out on your sleeve. Or you don't carry them around on a sign because you're vulnerable and you don't want people to see them. And that's where people always point the secretive finger at Scorpio folks. Okay. And let's be honest, we all have Scorpio somewhere in our chart. We all do. So understanding Scorpio and understanding those vulnerabilities, those hidden vulnerabilities, eventually over time, we're ready to see them. We're ready to embrace them. We're ready to accept, yeah, that happened to me. We're ready to then maybe talk about it and process it. And then finally, we get to the point when we've gone through all those phases of whether it's tragedy, phases of healing, whatever, where we can release, heal, and move on. And Scorpio is all of that. All of that. And that is why it's known as like the Merlin, the mystic, the metaphysician, because it encompasses stuff that is not 3D. Yeah, it encompasses stuff that we necessarily cannot see in the 3D, but we sure can feel it. We can feel it. And we can have the knowings. We can have help from the other side coming in, giving us information. We can talk to dead loved ones. We can bring in spirit guides. Like it's a really beautiful energy. And I love talking about it because Mars is on my ascendant. Yeah. Well, isn't Mars considered the traditional ruler of Scorpio energy? Yes, it is. So if I communicate in a passionate way, you are watching Mars on my ascendant. Okay. That's what you're watching. Obviously, there's other things in my chart that add to it, right? We are never just about the one thing. Never, never, never. We're a beautiful recipe on the stovetop where you've thrown in all the ingredients and you've let it sit on the stove for 3 days, 4 days, like a beautiful, rich, deep broth, a beautiful stock, right? That you've been nurturing over those 3 or 4 days on the stovetop, putting in all the different beautiful, magical herbs and spices, right? And so that that is who we are. That's who we are. And how many times when you're making something or somebody else is cooking and somebody asks, "What's in this? This is good. Can I have some more? This is delicious." And then the person who made it is thinking, "Damn, if I tell them what's in it, they're going to be like, no, thank you." Or they're all of a sudden not going to like it. Right. And that's the thing about Scorpio energy. You don't want to share that vulnerable spot because the fear of somebody then either making it worse, finding out your weak spot, or somehow making that wound hurt even more. There could be a fear of even rejection involved with it because Scorpio likes to bond. It loves to penetrate. It loves to dive deep. It loves, remember, it's opposite of Taurus. And that's attraction. It's the magnet. It's desire. And so Scorpio's over here. And so it has that ability. It wants that ability. It's just, yeah, we can be together, right? And we're going to connect in an authentic way, Scorpio energy. Okay, we're going to connect in an authentic way. It wants you to keep it real and raw. That is Scorpio. That's Scorpio. That's Mars. But it's also Pluto. Right. It's also Pluto. So, right. I talked about number one, Mars and the eclipse, and then Pluto coming in because Pluto is also a ruler of Scorpio. Right. Now, what's Pluto? It's powerful. It's intense. Mars is intense too, right? But Pluto brings the power. Pluto is the big brother of Mars. Right. So if Pluto is Mars's big brother, holy smokes, and they're working together. That's why I'm always saying, if you're going into battle, you make sure the Scorpio is on your team. Every team needs a pit bull. They need someone who's going to go in there, who's going to rush charge forward, and then who can kind of hang in there because they got the Pluto power, right? They got the Pluto power to back them up. That's Scorpio energy, okay? It's got power and it's got passion and it's got power that's got nothing to do with their physical body. That's why it's such a formidable opponent or partner, right? Can go to the deep depths of Hades and back and come up somehow alive, right? It's crazy. So this is an eclipse and we're releasing and ending something because it's a lunar eclipse, full moon lunar eclipse. And it's the ending of a cycle. And Scorpio is about, it's time to change and transform and heal. Pluto, change, transform, and heal. And it's something that has to do with something that was hidden, something that is old, something that's been around for a while, right? Because it's something that was buried at the foundation. It was under all the layers. And so for the change to occur, the foundation itself has to be taken down. Now, because it's in Scorpio, that is shared values. Shared values. So for some folks, this can be money because it's our shared values, right? Our shared values. So there's a lot that's been going on in the global banking systems. Global, but the United States definitely, right? Silicon Valley. So we'll see what happens. Pay attention to the degrees. 1458. So it's a 15-degree eclipse. South node, it's what we're letting go, what we're leaving behind. It's what is ending, what is closing out. And it has to do with your shared values and saying, I no longer value this anymore. It's time to let it go. And see, the thing with Scorpio energy, the fact that it's got wounds and those hurts, it's like it's the evidence of what it's lived through. It's the evidence of what it survived, right? And so it tends to hold on to those hurts for that reason. It's like, look, I was hurt. I have proof. You see? Even if it's not walking around with it on its sleeve, somewhere in the deep psyche, it's held on to it. And that's because Taurus holds on to things. It's magnetic. So it takes the Scorpio to go there and then to take that and to go there with it, to take it and to release it, to take it and to go here, recognize it, acknowledge it, accept it, say, okay, this once was a value, Taurus, and now I no longer value this, whatever this is for you in your life. How do you know? You find out where the Scorpio energy is, like what house number it's in. This is a Leo reading. So for Leos, this is in your fourth house, home, family, mom, nurturing. This is interesting. What do you have at 1458 in the sign of Scorpio? This is a big release that can bring a big, powerful, long overdue healing, because long overdue, these are wounds that started, yes, at the foundation in childhood, but these wounds were there before you were born. Okay, your soul had these wounds already imprinted on it. You follow? So the experiences you went through kind of were just adding salt into that wound. And so now it's like, okay, this isn't getting me anywhere. I can't move forward carrying this any longer. It's time to let it go. That's how we're going to go forward. So this is a beautiful opportunity for Leos in the home with family, right? Blood bonds, people you were married to, people that you weren't married to, people that you may not even feel that you are close to, like on a day-to-day basis, but energetically that vibration is there. It's going to bring a healing. It's time to release. Take advantage of it. Be the Phoenix rising and transform, ascend and fly, Leo. This is that opportunity. Okay. Now we're going to move along and we get to the middle of the month. This is actually right before the new moon. We're talking about Mercury here. We have Mercury, who in April, there's Mercury retrograde videos out. If you haven't watched them, go watch them. But in April, Mercury started a retrograde in the sign of Taurus. Money, my values, rethinking, reevaluating, and wanting options because it's Mercury, but making sure that it has all the options on the table, that it didn't forget any details, and then it's going to look things over before it makes a decision and a choice, because that's what Mercury is. It wants choices, but it has to do with your values. It's creature comforts. It's everything to do with the earth because it's Taurus. So this can simply be things about food, my income, right? Food and my income, my love and the worthiness of myself, and love as in partnerships too. Because once ourselves tell ourselves that we're valuable, that we have something we can bring to the table, that we are worthy, we change what we draw to us and who we attract to us. That's just how it works, folks. Okay. Energy is a boomerang, right? So Mercury for the month of May, it's going to be traveling. It's going to be traveling through and going direct. But there's a caution here. There's a caution. Even though Mercury goes direct on May 14th / May 15th, there's a shadow zone that you have to be aware of. Okay. So again, go watch the other video. It will give you more details. I'm just telling you right here, when Mercury goes direct on the 14th and the 15th in the sign of Taurus, you may feel like you have all the information. All I'm saying is, if it was me, I would not make any decisions just yet. Mercury is still in its, I call it rerun zone. It's redo zone. It's still in that zone. Okay. And this matters because we have a new moon on the 19th of May. On the 19th of the month, it's a new moon in Taurus. This is a big new moon. Yeah. The first few months of the year, those new moons set up the rest of the year, folks. So it's always a big deal. The new moons of January, February, March, April, May. It's a big deal. Big deal. Even June, because we're literally talking about like the lunar new year, right? So it's really all the way until June. It's the signs of Aries, Taurus, and Gemini that we pay attention to for grand new beginnings. Okay. And we know that we're still in Pisces and even Aquarius energy, right? at the beginning of our calendar year. So I'm not going to say anything else because it's just going to get confusing. But it's a new moon in Taurus, 28 degrees, 25 minutes, and it's at 10:53 a.m. Okay, 10:53 a.m. And everything I'm stating as far as dates and times, it is Central Daylight Time because that's where I'm located. You just have to adjust for the time zone that you're in. All right. So Leo, you're having a new moon in your career. It's your 10th house. It's your goals. It's your ambitions. Think long term. Think long term. You have Taurus energy in your 10th house. And if you think you're a Leo that may not have 28, 25 in your 10th house, comment to me below. I will figure that out for you because you're right. It's at the butt end of Taurus. And remember what I talked about in the beginning of the video about different house sizes. We are all going to have different house sizes because I use a tropical Placidus house system. That is what I have found is most accurate for me in the way that I do readings. Make sense? Other people use other systems, no wrong or right. That's just what works for them. So within the system that I use, my recommendation is always follow the degrees for that reason and comment to me and I will help you figure this out. But it's a new beginning with values because Venus rules this. Again, Venus pops up, right? Again, it's Taurus, the opposite of Scorpio, right? The opposite. So you had a release and a closure and an ending with that eclipse in your 4th house of home and family, feelings and emotions and nurturing, and then a new moon in Taurus, ambition, goal, my vocation even. Okay. Your 10th house can be anything that you have, like that you work for over a long period of time and you keep working at it, whether you get paid to do it or not. It's a vocation. It's like a commitment you make. You feel like it's your responsibility, like it is your duty. Like, yes, like a preordained duty for you to do this thing. And for those of you that can make money at that, you are blessed. But for many of us, we can't make money at it, right? And that's okay. That's okay. We just, some get to do that. It has to do with their chart and how it was set up. But that's your 10th house. So this can include marriage if that's what's on your calendar, if that's what your goal is, if that's what your long-term ambition has been, it can be marriage. And it can have to do with the home because it's the opposite of the 10th. It's whatever you've been working towards. Don't let me or any other astrologer tell you it's just about your job. It's just about your career because it's not. You are human. You are complex. You are so much more than that. And you have free will. You have free will. Okay. So we're going to have a new beginning in Taurus, money, values, self-worth, love, income. Remember the Mercury retrograde. It is done retrograding. It is now going direct, but it's not going to be clearing the retrograde zone to the end of this month to get those degrees and dates and all the specifics. Yeah, do yourself a favor and go watch that Mercury video just to double check everything I'm saying. I'm pretty spot on because I do have notes here for all of this. But again, this is for this Leo ascendant reading. Okay. And if you don't know, and you want to know, if you're confused about anything, again, that is my passion, is to help people to understand their charts because it's your life map. As I call it, it is your energetic frequency grid at the time that you were born, and it maps out your entire life. So if you want to know and you don't know, if you want to know and you need to know, do yourself a favor, comment below, and I will help you out in any way that I can. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Below the video, I'll have all the degrees for those of you who like to pay attention to the degrees in your chart. Again, if you don't know and you want to know, just comment below.